Week 6 of the fantasy football season. There's a few plays I look to buy and trade for this week. The first play is Zay Flowers of the Baltimore Ravens. Obviously, this Raven team took a big hit with Lamar Jackson out of the lineup. And Zay Flowers, I thought his numbers have been decent so far this season, but most people, they're down on this offense now with Lamar Jackson out. So the last few weeks for Flowers, Week 4, Kansas City, 7 catches, 74 yards. Week 5 versus Houston, 5 catches, 72 yards on 5 targets. Week 6, a good matchup versus the Rams. 10th most fantasy points to wide receivers on the season. I think Lamar Jackson, he's going to sit out this week in Week 6. Then Week 7, they have the bye, and I think Week 8, he'll be back in the lineup as Lamar Jackson. So obviously, he still had an okay game with Zay Flowers with Cooper Rush in their quarterback, and we've seen Cooper Rush over the years. He's capable of getting his number one wide receiver the football. We saw with the Dallas Cowboys on and off over the last few years when obviously Dak Prescott was out of the lineup. So Zay Flowers, like I said, many people down on him right now after a bad performance the Baltimore Ravens put on. Definitely a player I would go out there and buy this week. The next play is teammate Derrick Henry of the Baltimore Ravens. So Henry, he's definitely lost his step, and maybe those bigger games are going to be few and far between for Henry, but I think he's better than this, where the last 3 out of 4 games he's had single-digit fantasy points in PPR leagues. Week 3 versus Detroit, 12 carries, 50 yards, a touchdown, a catch, 7 yards. Week 4, Kansas City, 8 carries, 42 yards, 2 catches, 16 yards. And Week 5 versus Houston, 15 carries, 33 yards, and the rushing touchdown saved his day. So Henry definitely struggling yards per carry. Possibly Father Time did catch up to him. Obviously an older back and a lot of mileage on his body. It's been for Derrick Henry. But like I said, he's still a talented running back. And if they get within the red zone a lot, he's pretty much an automatic touchdown within that 5-yard line is Derrick Henry. So right now with the struggles over the last month and Lamar Jackson out of the lineup, I think he's a player you could easily go out there and pay a lower price than you would have even a few weeks ago. Next player, Chase Brown of the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals offense still struggling. I know they scored 24 points and Chase Brown still didn't do much, but Brown, there's no competition in the backfield over there in this Cincinnati Bengal offense. Samaje Perine is the number 2 running back for veteran. He's just going to be a change of pace guy at times. And Brown, the last 2 weeks, he has had double-digit fantasy points in PPR leagues, but still, where he was drafted, someone who obviously is not living up to the draft position. And obviously with Joe Burrow out, possibly the whole season with the turf toe, with the whole offense took a hit. Week 3 in Minnesota, 10 carries, 3 yards, 4 catches, 17 yards. Week 4 at Denver, 10 carries, 40 yards, 3 catches, 31 yards. And Week 5 versus Detroit, 8 carries, 27 yards, 7 catches, 21 yards on 8 targets. So like I said, he could do a lot in the receiving game as Chase Brown. Some dump off, some screens you could set up for him. And Week 6, it's going to be another tough matchup for this Bengal team. One of the better defenses in the league at the Green Bay Packers. But like I said, while Chase Brown hasn't lived up to his draft position, even though he's still putting okay games up the last 2 weeks, he's a buy low player this week. Next player, another Brown, but it's A.J. Brown of the Philadelphia Eagles. So a lot of frustration with A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith this season in Philadelphia's offense. But A.J. Brown's had a worse season pretty easily, in my opinion, than Devonta Smith in this offense, where he's only reached double-digit fantasy points once is A.J. Brown this season, and twice he's had under 3 fantasy points in PPR leagues. So it's definitely been a down year for A.J. Brown, and Week 6 could be the breakout for him at the New York Giants. I give up the second most fantasy points to wide receivers on the season, and also as well, it's a Thursday night game where we know those games are usually more high scoring. Week 3 at the Rams had his big game, 6 catches, 109 yards, found the end zone, 10 targets. Week 4 Tampa Bay, 2 catches, 7 yards, 9 targets. And Week 5 versus Denver, yeah, he had 8 targets, but only 5 catches, 43 yards, where Devonta Smith had the big game over 100 yards, and Dallas Goedert found the end zone. So like I said, 4 out of 5 games to begin the season without reaching double-digit fantasy points. A.J. Brown, definitely a player to buy this week. The next player, Chris Godwin of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So Chris Godwin, it's going to take time for him, obviously coming off the bad injury last season. He's in his way back in. And also with Emeka Egbuka getting so wide open, why wouldn't Baker Mayfield throw to a guy like Emeka Egbuka, who's been a big playmaker so far in his rookie season? So 2 weeks back in the lineup for Chris Godwin. Week 4 versus Philly, he had peppered with targets, 3 catches, 26 yards, 10 targets. Week 5 at Seattle, 3 catches, 26 yards, 4 targets. So Week 6, decent matchup versus San Francisco. Just saw Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams have good games versus defense. But like I said, Chris Godwin, it's going to take him some time to become 100%, but that he's back in the lineup running routes and still going out there, and he's looking decent at 75-80%. I think Godwin, as he ramps up, numbers are going to get better as the weeks go on, and definitely someone to buy low this week. The next player, Jakobi Meyers of the Vegas Raiders, with Brock Bowers banged up and no one else really in the receiving room besides Trey Tucker, who's more of a deep ball threat gadget guy. You would think Meyers would have stepped up even in the blowout loss at the Indianapolis Colts, but he only had 32 yards and 4 catches in the Week 5 blowout loss, and Meyers has definitely struggled 3 games in a row, failing to reach double-digit fantasy points in PPR leagues. But Week 6, a good matchup versus the Tennessee Titans. Myers, he still has to build rapport with Geno Smith, where I feel like this whole offense has been off besides Geno and Trey Tucker in terms of the receiving game, where Ginty's been okay this season. So Week 3, Washington, 3 catches, 63 yards. Week 4 versus the Bears, 4 catches, 30 yards. And Week 5 in Indianapolis, like I said, only 4 catches, 32 yards. So Week 6 could be a get-right game for Jakobi Meyers and this Raider offense. Like I said, Tennessee can't stop anyone. 6 most fantasy points to wide receivers on the end. Someone's going to have to catch the football over there in Vegas, especially if Brock Bowers is going to miss more ball games. So right now, while Myers has struggled over the last 3 weeks, definitely someone to go out there and buy this week. And the final player, TJ Hawkinson of the Minnesota Vikings. So Minnesota, they're on bye week after 2 international games. And Hawkinson, he's definitely been a disappointment this season, where a lot of people thought he'd be the top 5-6 tight end at the position. I even thought another year coming off the ACL, he'd be 100% healthy and ready to go. But him and McCarthy didn't have rapport in the first 2 games. And Carson Wentz coming into the lineup, his numbers have been a little bit better, but still underwhelming for Hawkinson. And now going on bye week and only having 1 double-digit fantasy day in the first 5 weeks of the season, he's easily a buy low candidate. Week 3 versus Cincinnati, 5 catches, 49 yards, a touchdown. Week 4 at Pittsburgh, 4 catches, 39 yards. And then Week 5 at Cleveland in that ball game, 6 catches, 38 yards on 6 targets. So like I said, haven't seen much from Hawkinson. Justin Jefferson, he's back to form with Wentz in the offense. But I think Hawkinson's a tight end that could go out there and make plays for this Minnesota Viking team, and still a big red zone target, and some of fantasy owners could buy low this week. So that's a few plays I look to buy and trade for Week 6 of the fantasy football season.